Welcome back to another C++ networking video. We are back at it again with HTTP. So last time we used this pretty cool library called HTTP lib. Here it is on GitHub. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. So we specifically focused on the client side functionality of this library. How can we use this library to request things via HTTP from the internet? And we set up a server using Hostinger, and we basically had two different examples that showed how to actually use this. Definitely check out that video if you're interested. This is kind of the continuation because today we're going to be focusing on the server side of all of this. Rather than me writing some kind of application in C++ to run like on my Windows computer, for example, and requesting some kind of data via HTTP like we did last time, we're going to be serving that data now. So we're going to be on the server side doing some HTTP serving. Look at me. I am the server now. So if we have a little look at what we did last time, we have this HTTP client in use here. In this example, we're actually just getting the weather asynchronously. There it is, 11.4 degrees Celsius in November, late November. In Melbourne, Australia is very rough. I have no idea why it's so cold. Anyway, we also had this other example over here, simple example, which was accessing our server. So this IP address is our server that we set up using Hostinger. And then you can see we're just using HTTP GET on this page specifically. And the result is whatever we put into that file. So this specifically from our server was being served using Nginx. Nginx is a web server. It's an HTTP server amongst other things. It's basically an application that functions as a server, as an HTTP server, but what if we want to write our own? We're C++ programmers. We should be able to do anything, right? I don't want to use Nginx. I don't want to use Apache. I want to serve my own files using code that I write, using a third-party library, of course. I'm not going to write it from scratch. I mean, I could, but who has time for that in this economy? So how convenient that this HTTP lib, this beautiful library, has not just a client example, but also a server example. It must be this easy, right? So step one, get a server. Step two, write some C++ code on it. I guess we might as well compile the code on the actual server itself, and then we'll execute our C++ program on the server, and then we basically don't need Nginx anymore. We can just serve our own stuff, but we can really write whatever code we want to serve any kind of data, I guess, theoretically. We'll be able to do anything. So let's get started. Step one, as I mentioned, is we need a server. And for that, I'm going to use Hostinger, the sponsor of this video. Hostinger is by far my favorite web host on the internet, and I've been through a few. Hostinger servers are super affordable, but they don't cut corners. They're really high quality servers. If you go to hostinger.com/Cherno, the first thing you'll notice is they're actually having a Black Friday sale on at the moment. This is the biggest sale of the year. This is the biggest sale of the year. Now is definitely the time to actually get yourself a server. You can see that they use AMD EPYC processors and NVMe SSD storage on all of their servers, making them perform really well. If you have a look at their VPS plans, you'll see that they're all KVM servers. What does KVM mean? Hostinger has an entire page on this, but basically all you need to know is that it allows a VPS to function as a completely independent server. One of my favorite things as well is that you can easily scale your plans. So you can just start off with a small one, and then if you find that you need more, you can seamlessly upgrade. All of these KVM servers come with full root access, which we're going to need to be able to create our C++ application and execute it. All of their plans also come with free weekly backups and excellent DDoS protection and security. Let's go ahead and pick this KVM2 plan, and then at checkout, make sure you click on this have a coupon code button and you use coupon code Cherno to get an even bigger discount. You'll get an additional 10% off. Setting up your server is super easy. All you have to do is pick a location for it. Hostinger have a bunch of data centers worldwide, and you'll be able to see what your ping is to any given location, which I think is really cool. You'll need to pick an operating system. They have a huge range to choose from. Ubuntu 24 is usually what I go with. And then finally set a root password and you are done. The setup takes only a couple minutes, and then you'll be greeted with this beautiful dashboard. From there, you're ready to SSH into your server and get started. As I mentioned, Hostinger is currently having their Black Friday sale. This is their biggest sale of the year. So head on over to hostinger.com/Cherno and use coupon code Cherno at checkout and get yourself an amazing server. Huge thank you to Hostinger, as always, for sponsoring this video. Okay, so once we have acquired a server, let's go ahead and write some C++ code to create an HTTP server and run it on our server. So as I've mentioned throughout my videos, my favorite way to do this kind of stuff is to install this remote SSH extension in VS Code. This is it by Microsoft. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Once you have that installed, what I have over here, I've opened up my server. You can see the IP address over here. I've opened this up in VS Code and I'm in a directory. It's blank. We're going to do this like from scratch now because it's really simple. Like it's really simple. The first thing I want to do is open up a new terminal. We're going to try and make a C++ application here. So you need to have some sort of compiler. I have Clang installed. I can just type in Clang, hit enter. You can see it clearly works. Otherwise, you'll probably have to do something like this after apt update. I already have this installed, so I'm ready to go. That's probably it. So to test everything and make sure it's working, I'm going to make this main CPP file. I'm just making it in this directory. I'm not even making a source directory for it. This is just going to be a really simple example, and we're going to try and keep it as simple as possible. With this remote SSH extension, by the way, you can also right click and create new files and folders. So you don't have to do it via the command line if you don't want to. Okay, so in this file, let's write some C++ code. So I'll include IO stream. We'll do int main. Look at that. We've already got a hello world program written for us by AI. I'll get rid of the return 0, even though it really wants me to add it because you don't need it. Now let's try and compile this. So clang++ main.cpp. And I mean, in the simple case, that's probably it. You can see it's generated this file over here called a.out. You probably don't want it to be called that, but anyway, now we should just be able to do // and run that. And you can see we print hello world. Programming on a VPS. Absolutely no issues there at all. Okay, so instead of outputting this a.out file, we can add an output just by doing -o, and then we can call it something like server. Yay. So now we have an actual application here kind of called server. Let's go ahead and delete that a.out file. So now I can basically do /server, and then I'm running my C++ program. Awesome. So realistically, you know, we're keeping things simple, as I mentioned. That is the name of today's game, I've decided. But if it wasn't, instead of like recalling this compilation command every single time you want to actually build this project, you could put it into some kind of script. I would definitely use CMake for more complicated projects, so you could generate like make files using CMake and then run make to actually do the building. That's just so overkill, but that's what people tend to do. You absolutely don't have to for simple things, and I think this is also why C++ gets such a bad reputation when it comes to complexity and how hard stuff is to work with. You can see how easy this is, right? Like this is super easy, and yes, it is a hello world program, but we don't need all of this extra stuff at all. And extending this to create an HTTP server is actually also not going to involve anything more than this. So let's do that, shall we? So what do we do now? How do we get this library and we build it? And I mean, look, there's a CMake file here, right? So I assume we should probably like maybe get CMake installed, convert this into like a CMake project. Maybe we'll use Git, we'll clone this library straight onto the VPS. I think that sounds reasonable. No, stop. This is a single file header only cross-platform library. So this is what we actually do. Because remember, we're in Simpletown tonight and we're keeping it that way. Where is the actual file? httplib.h. This is the file. I'm gonna click on raw over here, and then here it is. Here's the file. I'm gonna grab this URL. I'm gonna copy it, and then over here on my server, I'm just gonna type in curl, then that URL, and then, because I don't want it to just, I mean, if I run that, it's just gonna like print it for me over here, which is cool, but I want it in a file. So let's take all of this and we'll copy it and paste it. I'm just kidding. So let's run that same command, but then we're gonna use a right angle bracket here with a file name. And then it's gonna just basically put all of that log output into a file for us instead of showing it to us in the log, in the terminal. I mean, it's not really a log. Now that file was called httplib.h, so I will stay true to that. httplib.h. So we're putting the result of all of this into that. Let's hit enter. There we go. It's basically instant, it's done. And here we have the file. Okay, cool. That was quick. So now in main.cpp, let's include httplib.h. We'll save that file. Let's go ahead, clear our terminal, and then we will simply recompile it, and we're kind of done. By the way, one thing I probably would add to this for my sanity is the version of C++ we want to use. So for example, C++ 20, like that. And then if we hit enter, we'll get the same result. I'm not entirely sure what the default is if you don't actually specify this, but that's kind of the issue, that it might change. I think C++ 17 might be the default for obviously more modern versions of Clang. Actually, it's kind of easy to check, so why don't we just do that? So if I include format, which std format is a C++ 20 feature, so if we go ahead and just try and use format, maybe just with an empty string, doesn't really matter, and I try and compile using this command that doesn't explicitly specify, a C++ version. There we go. It doesn't exist. But if I go ahead and now specify C++20 and hit enter, then there we go. We're getting a warning instead of an error, and that's just because we're discarding the result of this and it's not supposed to be discarded, but you can see that compiles fine. Now, if we instead use a C++17 feature to just see whether or not that's actually in use, I'll just use file system path and we'll change this to be file system, and I will compile without specifying a version. Then you can see that actually still works. But file system is a C++17 feature, so if I drop to like C++14 and try and compile, then you can see it doesn't work. So yes, we have deduced that Clang++, whatever version I have installed, which I guess I probably should have checked. Okay, Ubuntu Clang version 18.1.3 uses C++17 as a default if you don't specify what version of C++ you'd like to use. You're welcome. All right, what were we doing again in this video? Oh yeah, HTTP server. Sorry about that. So let's get rid of all of this junk. So check this out. We're including this and it's compiling, obviously. So now if we go back to GitHub, let's go ahead and take a look at that example. So here's the server multi-thread example. Again, they've got like OpenSSL stuff being used here. You do need more libraries for that. That actually does realistically complicate things. So I might revisit that in a future video. But for now, let's just use the HTTP versions. Let me just copy like all of this, and then I'm going to paste it into VS Code. Let's tab this over. We're going to get rid of the HTTPS version. I'll tab this over as well. I think everything else looks pretty okay. Yeah, I mean, that's basically the example that they had. So let's get rid of hello world. So it should actually serve us hello world. Let's change that to hello from C++ server. And then I'm just going to compile this. I guess we don't really need to use C++20 or anything. We can just leave it like that. Keep things simple, use C++17. And then I'm just going to run our server. And you can see, by the way, that it compiled with no issues, no warnings, no nothing, and it's now running. So that's nice. I mean, we're not even compiling with optimization or anything, but that doesn't really matter for this example. So what have we actually done? What is this program that we've created? What is it doing? So the example that they had uses HTTP GET on the hi location, right? So this like /hi page to serve us this content as text plain. We're listening for connections on the local host port 8080. So if this is actually working correctly and this port is not like blocked by the firewall or anything, then if I type in the URL or the IP address of this server, port 8080/hi, and I hit enter, hello from C++ server. Look at that, in Chrome, in a web browser. We're actually using C++ code to serve data via HTTP that we can request from any web browser. I mean, check it out. It's working on my phone. Like, of course it's working on my phone. This isn't like the most groundbreaking thing in the world, but it is really cool because it was just so easy. It was just so easy to do this in C++ on a server that I think a lot of you who are like really scared of this stuff, or you're scared of C++ or Linux or whatever it may be, you're just overcomplicating things. And it might not even be your fault. Like, people around you might be overcomplicating things, and that really is a problem. Anyway, so this is a C++ program, and you can obviously use this however you like. You can generate like the data that you're sending here really however you like. You could write some basic like C style file IO if you want. In fact, let's do that for fun because AI is kind of helping us. Like, we can just kind of rely pretty much on AI. Like, look at this. I'm just tabbing across. It doesn't even know what it's reading. Like, what is this code that it's generating? I mean, it seems pretty good. Also, we don't have to use C style file IO. We can use C++, but I don't know, I just wrote this. Okay, so here is basically what it did. Let's stop this program and we'll see if we can fix this up. This looks pretty reasonable to me, so we're just going to serve whatever was in that file. The file was called data.txt. Let's create a new file called data.txt, and then we'll basically grab, I probably shouldn't serve the exact same thing. Let's get rid of this anyway because we don't want to be also doing that. And then in our file, let's just do like hello from a file now, still C++. And then I'll save that. Okay, let's go ahead and compile and we'll run. And now if we refresh our web browser, hello from a file now, still C++. Child's play. This is honestly a really nice library. This HTTP lib, like this is how it's meant to be. Like, as far as C++ goes, it doesn't have to be complicated at all. Okay, so the last example I want to show you is through Walnut, through our actual client-side C++ code, we can obviously do the same thing. I mean, here we were going to /API, which by the way is still being served by Nginx. Like, I have not taken that away. But now if we add port 8080, which is our C++ HTTP server and I do /hi, which is that page that location that we created, then check this out. Now we see hello from a file now, still C++. So we're actually using C++ as the client to request data from a server that is also something that we made using C++. And that's serving us this data across the world. I don't remember exactly what location I picked for that hosting a server, but yeah. There you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It really has been fun taking a look at this HTTP lib library. I really quite recommend it. Honestly, I recommend it as much as I can, having done like I mean, I've basically just run like this code from the README for it, but the fact that it just works so flawlessly, like this is what I'm all about. There's a lot of follow-up, obviously, that I could do to the stuff that we've taken a look at in these last 2 videos. Let me know what you'd like to see in the comment section below. A bunch of you in the last video who have used this library more than I have were vouching for just how good it is, so that's awesome to see as well. So yeah, let me know if you enjoyed this kind of me like messing around with some C++ code, because this is the first time like I've done something like this, and honestly it was quite fun. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to check out Hosting's amazing Black Friday sale using my link in the description below, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.